What if I told you there was a kid who had a private zoo in his backyard? Not like a petting zoo with sad goats. I'm talking elephants, giraffes, hippos, exotic birds, a full safari just casually hanging out on the property. This kid had go-karts, swimming pools, 27 artificial lakes, life-size dinosaur statues, his own gas station, and a staff of 1,700 people whose entire job was to make sure he never needed anything. His birthday piñatas were stuffed with cash, not coins, stacks of bills. His cousin once got a craving for a specific hamburger from a restaurant across the city, so they sent a helicopter to go pick it up. A helicopter for a burger. Sounds like the coolest childhood on the planet, right? Yeah, that kid was me. My name was Juan Pablo Escobar, and my dad was Pablo Escobar, the biggest drug lord in the history of the world. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you will not be jealous. But we'll get there. First, let me show you what a normal day looked like when I was a kid. Because for a while, it was genuinely insane, in the best way possible. It's 1981. I'm 4 years old, and life is basically a movie. My dad is rich, like offensively rich. But at this point, I have zero idea where the money comes from. I don't even think about it. I'm 4. My biggest concern is which swimming pool to use today, because we have several. Normal kid problems. So one day, my dad decides we're going on a family vacation to the United States. He just books the trip under his real name, because in 1981, nobody in America knows who Pablo Escobar is yet. We fly into the country like regular tourists. We go to Washington, D.C. My dad takes a photo with me in front of the White House, the actual White House. The most wanted man who will ever live is standing there smiling with his 4-year-old son in front of the president's house, and not a single person bats an eye. Then we go to Disney World. My father, this man who is currently building a cocaine empire, is riding Space Mountain and having the time of his life, like a little kid, giggling, eating churros, just a normal dad at Disney. My mom later described that trip as the only period of pure pleasure and lavishness my father ever enjoyed. No complications, no enemies, just us. But that happiness wouldn't last. Now here's where a normal family vacation story would end, right? We went to Disney. It was great. The end. But this is the Escobar family. So obviously, the guy taking us on splash rides would later become responsible for 80% of the world's cocaine supply. But I didn't know that yet. I was 4. I was on a teacup ride. Life was good. Okay, fast forward a few years. I'm 7 now. And if you're 7 years old and your family is rich, you don't ask questions. You just accept that this is how life works. Some kids have a backyard with a swing set. I have a backyard with hippos. To me, that's just Tuesday. But little things start to feel off. Like the fact that there are always men with guns around the house. Everywhere. Big guys. Serious faces. At the time, I thought they were just security guards. Every rich person has security, right? What I didn't understand was that these weren't protecting us from burglars. They were cartel soldiers. Some of them were sicarios, professional hitmen, and they were also, somehow, my babysitters. I'm not joking. I had roughly 15 different sicario babysitters throughout my childhood. These are men whose actual job was to kill people for my father, and their side job was making sure I ate my lunch and didn't fall off things. Imagine career day at school. What does your dad do? He's a dentist. Cool. Mine sent a helicopter for a hamburger, and my babysitter has a body count. But the thing is, I genuinely cared about these guys. They were kind to me. They played with me. They protected me. They were part of my daily life. The relationships were intense because life was fragile. You might say goodbye to one of them in the morning and never see them again. That was just normal. That was my normal. Here's another thing about being 7 in the Escobar household. My dad starts becoming paranoid. Not like, I think someone's watching me paranoid. He bought an entire taxi company so he could monitor when strangers arrived in Medellín. That's not paranoia. That's a business plan for paranoia. He had 15 different safe houses scattered across the city, and every 48 hours, he'd move us to a new one. Blindfolded. His own children. Blindfolded in the back of a car, driven to a new location. And when we arrived, our job was to look around and tell him if we recognized anything. If we did, we had to leave immediately because that meant the location was compromised. Why blindfold your own kids? Because if his enemies ever kidnapped and tortured us, we physically could not reveal where we lived. We didn't know. That's a level of parenting that no book prepares you for. What to expect when you're expecting does not have a chapter on tactical blindfolding. But at 7, I didn't fully grasp the weight of it. I was mostly just annoyed that I kept having to pack my stuff. It was like an endless sleepover where you never knew whose house you were going to next. Except the stakes were slightly higher than whose mom makes the best pancakes. This is where things start to shift. I'm 8, and one day, my father sits me down at a table. He lays out every type of drug he can get his hands on. Cocaine, marijuana, everything. And starts explaining what each one does to the human body, like a science lesson, from the man who supplied the entire planet. Now, I need to be clear, he wasn't recruiting me. It was the opposite. He was trying to scare me away from ever touching the stuff. He wanted me to see the ugliness of it up close, so I'd never be tempted. The man responsible for flooding the world with cocaine looked his 8-year-old son in the eyes and said, "Drugs are evil and corrupting." And he meant it. A year later, when I was 9, he gave me a full tour of his cocaine processing labs, like a factory field trip. And over here, kids, is where we process the product that has destroyed millions of lives. Don't touch anything. Also, I love you. Let's get ice cream after. That contradiction was the permanent background noise of my childhood. Loving father, monster, both at the same time. And somehow, as a kid, you hold both of those truths in your head and just keep going. Because what else are you going to do? You're 9. Your options are limited. Let me tell you about the money. By now, my dad is making an estimated $70 million a day. A day. He had so much cash that he was spending $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to hold the bills together. He literally could not store all of it. Money was rotting in warehouses. Rats were eating through stacks of bills. He was losing roughly 10% of his earnings annually to water damage and rodents. When you're so rich that rats are eating your money and it doesn't even matter, you've crossed into a dimension of wealth that stops making sense. But here's what people never understand. Money didn't equal safety. It didn't equal happiness. It didn't equal anything that actually matters. We had millions, and we could not go outside to buy a piece of bread. Think about that. Billions of dollars, and you can't walk to a corner store without risking your life. And then there was the night in the mountains. We were in hiding. It was freezing cold. My little sister Manuela was shivering so badly, she was getting sick, potentially hypothermia. There was no firewood, no way to heat the safe house. Sending someone out to buy supplies was too dangerous. But we had cash, so my father built a fire. Out of money. $2 million in American banknotes, burning in a pile on the ground so his daughter wouldn't freeze to death. We cooked our food over that fire. $2 million as kindling. And we ate rotten soup that night. Because the richest criminal in history couldn't send someone to buy groceries. That image has never left me. The flames eating through stacks of $100 bills while we huddled around it for warmth, eating food that had gone bad. That is what a $30 billion empire actually looks like when you strip away the glamour. That's the reality behind the mythology. Not mansions and helicopters. A family burning money for heat because they've run out of options. By the time I'm 12, the war is fully on. My father is at war with the Colombian government, with the Cali cartel, with a vigilante group called Los Pepes, whose only mission is to destroy everything connected to the Escobar name. They go after our extended family. Uncles, aunts, cousins. Properties are burned. People are kidnapped. My cousin is snatched off the street. We flee by helicopter. My mother, my sister, and me. We try to get asylum in the United States. Denied. Germany. Denied. Nobody on Earth wants Pablo Escobar's family on their soil. So, we end up right back in Colombia, where the government puts us in a hotel in Bogota, a hotel owned and operated by the National Police. They're using us as bait. They know my father can't stay away. They know he'll call to check on us. And they're right. I'm 16 years old. My father calls me from a house in Medellín. He knows the police can trace calls longer than 3 minutes. He's been careful about this for months. Short calls, always moving, never staying on the line. But this time, he stays. He keeps talking to me, his son, Maybe he knew. Maybe he just wanted to hear my voice a little longer. I don't know. I'll never know. The police trace the signal. They surround the building, and they kill him on a rooftop, one day after his 44th birthday. My father had told me once that if his enemies ever surrounded him, he would shoot himself in the right ear rather than be captured alive. When I saw the forensic photos, his own pistol lying next to him in exactly the position he described, I understood. The phone call that got him killed was the phone call he made to me. I went on television that night and swore revenge. I was 16. I was broken. I wanted everyone responsible to suffer. I meant every single word, but I didn't do it. Everything disappeared overnight. The money, the properties, the power, all of it gone. My mother took my sister and me, and we ran. Mozambique first, then Argentina, on tourist visas. We were broke. No country wanted us. Airlines refused to sell us tickets under the name Escobar, so I opened a phone book in Buenos Aires, picked a random name, and killed Juan Pablo Escobar forever. I became Sebastián Marroquín, a nobody, which, after 16 years of being the most hunted kid on the planet, was exactly what I needed to be. I went to school. I studied architecture. I got married. I had a son. I built an actual career designing buildings, which feels poetic when I think about it. My father's legacy was about destruction, so I chose a life of building things instead. But the hardest thing I ever did wasn't changing my name or starting over. It was reaching out to the families of my father's victims, the sons of the politicians he had murdered. I wrote them letters, asking for forgiveness, and then I sat across from them, face to face, and apologized for everything my family put theirs through. That was more terrifying than anything I experienced during the war. I've now spoken with over 150 families of his direct victims. Every conversation guts me, but I believe in it, because the past can't be changed, but the future isn't written yet. People ask me constantly, do you miss it? The wealth, the power, the lifestyle? And my answer is always the same. I had the privilege of being a millionaire as a child, and it never made me happy. Not for a single day. Drug trafficking is a curse. Nothing you have lasts. My father showed me the path a society must never take, the path where life stops meaning anything. But he also held me as a baby, rode roller coasters with me at Disney World, and burned $2 million just to keep my sister warm. He was a monster and a loving father, and I have to carry both of those truths for the rest of my life. I was born Juan Pablo Escobar, but I chose to become someone else entirely. Because the most powerful thing you can do when you're raised in darkness isn't revenge. It's choosing to build something in the light. So let me ask you this. If you were in my shoes, born into billions and bloodshed, would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed in that world? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there.